for most of about 50 years now, I've been in the habit of making parliamentary speeches quite regularly from time to time, and I retired from that when I left the other place in November of last year. So I am particularly honoured to find that I can now resume this practice in this most illustrious setting with such distinguished colleagues on all sides, including many old friends. And I trust I won't abuse the privilege of being back in parliamentary debate, but my maiden speech will be the first time that I have ever attempted to make a speech subject to a 4-minute time limit. And many of my noble friends will be at this moment doubting my ability to manage that. I echo what my former Commons colleague, Baroness Clarke, said about the welcome that new peers receive here. This is, in every way, a remarkable institution, but fellow peers, not just old friends, are especially welcoming, and I share her gratitude to all the staff here who go out of their way to help people utterly baffled by the rabbit warren of corridors and the somewhat strange new practices that we rapidly have to take on, and I'm grateful to all those who have done so. The major change I'm having to face is that I find this historic chamber has all its logistics based on the use of IT of various kinds, which I have previously scorned. And so, this most surprisingly for this particular house, a 20th century man is being forced to get into the 21st century, and it is trying to open and switch on a laptop and an iPad and then contemplate how using it, which is my biggest problem at the moment, as I say, because of the generosity of all those who are helping me in every other way. On this subject, I can only say I have every sympathy with the government as a former Secretary of State for Health and a former Chancellor of the Exchequer. This is the worst health crisis that's hit this country and the worst recession so far, and economic crisis that's occurred in my lifetime. And the difficulty of dealing with it is shrouded with total uncertainty. All forecasts on all fronts are quite useless because the disease is new, its behaviour is unknown, therefore the range of scientific and medical opinion about the way in which it can be controlled and what's going to happen is not a unanimous science. It is immensely varied, and it is quite unprecedented that choices have to be made on the tensions between the life-saving prospects of doing one thing and the damaging economic consequences that step will have on the other. And what's going to happen is everybody is going to second-guess every decision that ministers come to as they go along. And as we're now in the days of public inquiries, with the wisdom of hindsight, everybody will be able to see what should have been done in the light of what we know has happened. Everybody will say how obvious it was that steps should have been taken. Yes, the government has made mistakes. Every Western government has made mistakes. The mistakes at the beginning were not being tough enough. It's quite obvious we should have gone into lockdown probably about 3 weeks before we did. It's quite obvious that we should have quarantined flights in from places like Spain and Italy almost instantly. We should obviously have been more aware of the dangers to the residents of care homes and ended the practice of discharging patients from hospitals to care homes without testing before doing so. But if the government had done those things in the beginning of March, it would have faced all the protests about civil liberties, excess infringements, controls, and so on that we're hearing now. And we mustn't repeat that. After the policy succeeded, because we only had about 60,000 excess deaths, although we're left behind, we're as bad as almost any other country in the world, people now have got used to the small, each tragic, level of deaths and disaster we're having. The demand now is Now let's have more liberty. Now let's protect our freedom. Let's not step things up. I think the Parliament should subject itself to more parliamentary scrutiny of the next steps. With that, I totally agree with all those who voiced that. It would strengthen them. It would give them more authority. It would give them a better defence when they obviously made a mistake, and they will make more mistakes. But actually, the position now is they'll also be strengthened by the support they get. The majority of the public support the measures the government is now taking. The rule of 6 is not particularly severe. Closing pubs at 10s takes us back to the days of my teens, but it's not actually a major infringement of civil liberties. Opinion polls show the public would accept tougher measures from the government, and I think the majority of Parliament, after proper debate and scrutiny, would allow most of them. It would, however, save us from the occasional, all the strange dilemmas we know have occurred, the slips that occur, and I think the government, as the public as a nation, will be held together better if we scrutinise more firmly, but not on the basis that we second-guess every decision that any minister mounts and start politicising it in this extremely dangerous world.